The first one is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's personal security. We have some of the highest crimes right now in our adult life here in the Twin Cities. We never used to be that way. We were never Detroit. We were never Chicago. This was a policy change, and this is the lack of leadership at the top of our executive branch.
I'm on the road again, half drunk with a lit cigarette. I don't know when I'll be back in this town. At least that's what I tell her. Baby, I'm just saying, maybe I just think too much. I'm leaving in the AM, baby, are you staying? I know that you drank too much. And this is what she said to me. I'm just your ordinary fucker. There's nothing special about me. I still bump like more night when I get drunk. I'm just telling you, I'm not playing you. I just wanna be the real me around you.
This is Kendall Qualls. Kendall is he's kind of thrown his hat in the ring for the primary for Republican governor of Minnesota. So that voting is August 9th, and you're only 2 months deep into this right now.
Actually, three months.
3 months.
3 months into it, we have a endorsement process. So the state Republican Party has an endorsement process with delegates that actually meet the weekend of May 13th.
Okay.
Coming out of that endorsement process, we will have an endorsed state party representing the Republican Party for candidate for governor.
Yep.
And then August 9th is the actual primary. So this
Right.
is kind of a two-step process.
Right. All right. And I mean, I know you've told your story a million times, but it is an inspiring story. It's very unique, and I don't know. They make books and movies about guys with stories like that. You know what I mean? So if you want to just kind of touch on that.
Sure. Don't mind at all. So, I tell people, really, you think about it, I really shouldn't be here at all, even on this interview. The fact that a kid from a broken family that lived part of his childhood in Harlem, New York, in housing projects, eating government cheese, powdered eggs, powdered milk, and then later in his childhood lived with his father in a trailer park in Oklahoma. That kid wouldn't graduate from high school, go to college, become an Army officer, become a vice president of a major corporation, raise 5 kids with his wife of 36 years.
Yeah.
But that story happens, and to be quite honest with you, it happens quite a bit in our country from
Right.
people from different backgrounds. That idea of the American dream still works. And in fact, if anything we need to show people how to get there, how to access those opportunities, because we often hear that it no longer exists.
Right.
And I want to champion that cause for everyone, regardless of race, regardless of social standing in life.
Absolutely. I've always kind of said, like, the worst thing to tell a kid is you can't.
That's exactly right.
People should tell somebody you can do anything, because you put one foot in front of the other and you have a passion. People get to where they are because of, there's tragedies in life, and then there's things that go right, and there's luck, but there's if you're not following through, you just won't get there. But people try to tell kids you can't, and I just always think they should never listen.
Well, we're a country of dreams,
Right.
and we're a country of dream makers that make it happen.
Absolutely. So where in Oklahoma did you live?
Yeah, it's an Army base, a major Army base called Fort Sill at the southern part of the state.
Okay.
And that's where my dad retired. In fact, that's where my father-in-law also retired. I met my wife in there, and we went to high school together. And 36 years later, we call Minnesota our adopted home state, and we want our children to raise their children here. But things are changing drastically, and I felt a need to get into this race and help save our state, help save our country.
Absolutely. What would you say are the three worst things about the state now that you'd like to address?
Yeah, I have three top priorities, and to be honest with you, they transcend politics, and that's why I believe that we can win with the widest margin. That's the only reason I'm in this race. I have no malice toward any of the other candidates. They're all good people. I believe that can help us win because we need a wide margin of victory, just in case there's any shenanigans.
Right.
Not to say there's going to be,
Right.
but if there are, we need a wide margin. And so those three topics that transcends politics. Number one, the first one is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's personal security. We have some of the highest crimes right now in our adult life here in the Twin Cities. We never used to be that way. We were never Detroit. We were never Chicago. This was a policy change. And this is the lack of leadership at the top of our executive branch here in our state. And also with our Attorney General. So we need to make sure that we get both the Attorney General's office, the Governor's office, as well as the Secretary of State, so we can make sure we get secure elections. So number one is the safety. There are women getting beat in parking lots in the suburbs and children getting shot in their neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. That didn't used to happen. And let me contrast this to you. In October 2009, Forbes magazine did a survey of all the major cities across the country on quality of life as well as safety. And we did quite well on that survey. In fact, we were number one. We were on the cover as the safest, cleanest big city in the country. We're going to get that back in 18 months with the Qualls administration. Number two, the biggest thing is that we have Minnesotans leaving the state in record numbers. Last year was the highest number of Minnesotans leaving the state in the 30-year history. And one of the biggest reasons is that we have one of the highest tax burdens in the country. Personal tax, corporate tax, death tax, we even tax Social Security. All of that's going to change again when we get elected, when we get that mandate. Mm-hmm. And then the third one, I think is really important, is they're kind of interwoven. Education is something that all parents want to have for their children, mm-hmm. whether you live in the best school district, the most wealthiest zip code, or if you live down in most challenging areas in life. Everyone believes that children deserve a fair, decent education to chart a pathway in life. And right now, we're not getting it.
Right.
We want to make sure that parents have the empowerment, the control to make the best decisions for their kids. And we're going to give them school choice. So wherever they want to send their children, the dollars will follow them. Right. So vouchers or school choice, how we want to label that. The other part of that is, look, we're spending a lot of money and time on the social justice stuff when our kids are not reading at grade level or doing math as well in grade level. So we're jeopardizing the fundamentals of education for wokeness that's going on in our culture. And I think all of us are being really kind of tired of being bullied by this woke left of cancel culture, claims of racism on every turn. That needs to end, and it will end day one with the new administration.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll even say, like, as a white guy, I'm kind of just like somewhat at this day and age, I'm kind of censored, and because it's funny to say, it's not funny, but you saw Larry Elder. I mean, the comparison's remarkable, but so Larry Elder got called the blackface of white supremacy. Then all of a sudden allegations started of him pointing a gun at his girlfriend or wife or whatever. Why didn't those allegations come out before he was running for something? Why does it take that long? Maybe because it's not real. Maybe it is. But as a black candidate for a conservative party, you almost get so disenfranchised because the left does not want to put you probably on the news. They want to keep you far from it. You've been on Fox News, and that's probably the only opportunity you'll get. And it's kind of horrifying,
Well, here's the scenario we have. Unfortunately, we don't live in an era of free press anymore. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely tragic. I mean, that's the one thing you need to have for a representative government. that we have checks and balances. And right now, our legacy media is literally a arm of a political party. It's very unfortunate. But with that said, the greatness about this country is that it's a bottom-up country, not a top-down.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing a lot of people rise up in a political way, not a violent way, but a political way. I'll give you an example. And when I say people, I'm talking about there are Black Americans from around the country and even in our state. Once we get through this endorsement process, we'll have more Black Americans running as Republicans in Minnesota in our history.
Mm-hmm.
Across our country, we'll potentially have 3 Black Republicans running for governor at one time, a senator running in Georgia. Actually, there'll be 2 Black senators, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, competing each other. You're beginning to see a rise of Black conservatives that love the country, denounce this critical race theory, counter the narratives of everything the media is saying about racism and opportunity and all of that. And it's interesting. It's all coming together and orchestrated, and really at the same time, unorganized. Mm-hmm. It's happening organically, which is really neat to see.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And so once in a while I listen to the Megyn Kelly show. Not that often, but recently I did. This was probably a month ago or something, and they talked about Michelle Tafoya. Is she working with you or doing campaigns or just commercials for you or something? But she was talking about your campaign and how she was planning on helping out.
Yep, absolutely. I'm glad to have Michelle on the team. She is the co-chair of the campaign. We have 2 chairs, and Michelle Tafoya, when she retired officially the day after the Super Bowl,
mm-hmm.
She joined our campaign officially as a co-chair. She loves the country. She wants to be vocal about, warning Americans, waking Americans up on what the dangers are when we're losing our country and we're losing our freedoms. And my story, my personal story of how I persevered and actually activated the formula that works in our country, regardless of where you come from in life.
Mm-hmm.
She loved that story, and she wants to be a part of it. She wants to expand it. She'll tell people that, look, she was approached by other candidates and didn't feel that, it wasn't, she didn't feel that not only that they can win, or that she couldn't endorse what they were standing for. But she was happy to endorse me because of the story and because she believes we can win.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned, you went from Oklahoma and then you went to the military. And what did you have a role model or somebody you looked up to, or how did you end up in the military? Was it just like, hey, there's my options, I'll take that? Or did you look up to somebody that was in the military and that's kind of the route you took?
No, so first of all, my father served for 25 years.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he was a drill sergeant.
Oh.
And then I went in through the officer ranks. I worked full-time through college, paid my way through school. And look, especially for young males in their 20s back then, I would hope still now, looking up to someone that serves in uniform is a big deal.
Right.
And, who wouldn't want to serve the greatest country on earth in uniform? Mm-hmm. And I was happy to do it, glad to do it, honored to serve. I served for 5 years on stateside as well as in Korea, right on the DMZ. And I just got tremendous amount of pride in that, but also great leadership experience. I didn't want to make it a career for me. It's realizing the sacrifice you make when you serve. It's also a sacrifice on family. And my family wasn't a good example. My parents divorced. It's a tough life, to do with a family. Mm-hmm. So I left after 5 years, honorable discharge, and I got a job in sales with a major healthcare company, and then sales management. And then I tell people I went to school. I got my MBA from U of M, and that's the other U of M in Ann Arbor, in Michigan.
Yep.
And I got promoted to the home office in New Jersey, and from that point, as a junior marketer on a really strategy on marketing for one of our brands, a hospital brand, we took it from $0 to $1 billion, made it the #1 anti-infective in the country. After 4 years, I had a responsibility for a $90 million budget for $1 billion brand. and I'm less than an hour away from Harlem, where I grew up as a kid. My early part of my childhood, where I went to elementary school for 3 to 4 years. A story like that only happens in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other part of what got me activated in this, and when I started seeing how I'd say the left has gotten, is this whole idea of systemic racism, and that Black people can't get ahead, and all these other things. Like in my personal life, my personal and professional life, there are people that helped me along the way. Some of them look like me, and a lot of them didn't. They were Black, white, male, female, rich and poor, and everything in between. Americans help people when they see them trying to better their lot in life, and they don't put a racial filter on it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's tragic about this is that whenever the media sees or the left sees some knucklehead that does something out of character that's racist, they'll use that person as a caricature for the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wrong.
Right.
And look, at the end of the day, I became a Christian later in my life, when I was 27. And I go around and I talk to people, I tell them, look, Americans don't back down from a fight, and God's people stand up against evil. Mm-hmm. And when you're perpetrating this idea, especially to young kids, that they can't get ahead because of white people in the suburbs, that's evil. It's evil, and because if more than anything, Americans will help people trying to get a better lot in life, and these people pushing this narrative wants to divide us as a country and divide us as a people and weaken our country so they can stay in permanent power. And that's evil as well. So that's what I'm fighting against.
Absolutely. So whatever brought you to Minnesota then? Was it a job move?
Yep. So we lived all over the country. My wife and I, we raised our 5 kids. We got a chance to see the country, the entire country, live across the entire country. I don't think native Minnesotans understand how great this state is, because we did. We made it. We call it our adopted home state. I want my children to raise their children here. And families are a big thing for me, especially coming out of the family that I had, my broken family that I did. Minnesota is one of the very, very few states, especially in the Midwest, where multiple generations of family members can earn a living without having to leave the state. Mm-hmm. A lot of Midwest, especially Midwest states, there may be 1 or 2 major industries.
Yep.
And when that industry declines, guess what happens? The kids have to leave, the grandkids have to leave in order to make a living someplace else around the country.
Absolutely.
You don't get that type of diversity of our economy here in Minnesota until you go to the East or West Coast. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have such a large, diverse economy is great. But the problem is that if we don't nurture it, if we don't make it an attractive place to stay or attractive place to invest from a business standpoint, it will never stay the same. People will leave, and we're seeing it happen right now. And that's why I'm getting involved, because I believe I can help. Second, I have a personal motivation because I want my kids to stay here and raise their kids here.
Absolutely. So I'm going to swing back around way back, but so you mentioned your dad was a drill sergeant. Was he kind of like a drill sergeant at home too, or was he strict and disciplined? Or?
I don't know any part-time drill sergeants. I can tell you, our beds were inspected, our drawers were inspected. You're a bit too young to remember this movie called Officer and a Gentleman, but that was like my dad. I mean, he had biceps like bowling balls.
Right.
I tell people you get one chance to make a mistake growing up when your dad's a drill sergeant. The second mistake, you're basically gone. Your face is on the cover of the milk box saying like missing child.
Mm-hmm.
But because discipline was swift and severe.
Absolutely.
So
wow.
So getting in trouble was not an option for me.
Right. Yep. And so, like a person's entire life experience is what makes them. And I mean, you grew up in Harlem, moved away. You've kind of lived both spectrums of poor, kind of poor rural, poor urban.
Right.
What are like some of the tragedies? And I'm not looking for clickbait stuff. Nothing not real is worth talking about,
Yeah.
Reality. I mean, everybody goes through something. I mean, like, what are some of the tragedies that you've dealt with that have just made you the man you are today?
Well, here's a scenario for me. Even though we were poor, my mother, living in Harlem, living in the housing projects, my mother had high expectations for us. I tell people all the time, like New York City was when I was there, one of the filthiest cities. Harlem was one of the filthiest cities. The stench and everything else. The public housing project was horrible. Literally walking up the stairs because the elevator didn't work half the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was dark and a lot of drug addicts shooting up in that stairwell. And heroin addicts. It would smell like urine as you go up the stairs. I go in our apartment, and it's like a Pine Sol commercial. Man, I walk in, and my mom all the time she was a mother of that age. She never had a driver's license. She just wanted to be a mom, and she had an apron on half the time. And I walk in, and our apartment was the cleanest place in the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have much.
Yeah.
But what we didn't have, it was a sense of pride, right? And the place was always clean. My mom, the cleanliness was close to godliness. I come home every time and it always smelled like Pine Sol. And she wanted us to do well in school. There was no expectation that just because we were poor that it's okay to steal or to lie or to cheat or none of that. So although we were poor in property and wealth, that's the point, but we weren't poor. We weren't taught to be poor in character.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so even when I moved to a trailer park in Oklahoma, which I thought was really kind of an upgrade, but the problem with living in Harlem was it was constant violence. Constant violence. I mean, a lot of these kids, they grow up in a very bad situation where sirens are always going. Constant sounds of sirens, constant sounds of yelling and screaming and gunshots, and often that's the norm.
Yeah.
The problem is that that's come to Minneapolis, and it was never used to be the norm. We're going to change it. We're going to get our city back in 18 months.
Yep.
If I'm elected, we're going to get it back in 18 months. You'll be able to have a picnic in the center of a street at midnight in downtown Minneapolis once we get done cleaning it up.
That'd be fantastic. I mean, is the plan to just bring back law enforcement and kind of stiffer punishment? Because I know, like, right now, one of the thing is there's repeat offenders, and then it's like the third offense ends up being a homicide.
Well, so it's a three-pronged strategy. Number one, it is police force. We plan on hiring 300 to 400 state law enforcement officers that report at the state level to the Commissioner of Public Safety. Mm-hmm. And then the Commissioner of Public Safety, that person that we appoint, will organize these officers into a task force and coordinate them with the Twin City police chiefs. Mm-hmm. So basically, the city council, whether they want them or not, those law enforcement officers will be visible. They'll be present in the Twin Cities. The second approach is that we're going to make sure that the county attorneys, do their jobs. Only place you should be doing catch and release is on the lake. Mm-hmm. Okay,
right?
Not with criminals,
right?
And we will make sure that the judges and the attorneys will do their jobs. If not, I'm going to side with the victims, and their names will be publicly known if they don't do their jobs. Mm-hmm. It's called accountability.
Absolutely.
And a lot of officers know that who some of these repeat offenders are that have outstanding warrants. They will be there's an immediate low hanging fruit picking up of these violent criminals off the street in the first 30 days, and then all the rest of it is accountability and doing our jobs.
Absolutely. And actually, you know what I like most about you is accountability. You're not a career politician, and a lot of people don't trust career politicians at this time. My political views have just kind of swayed to anti-corruption. Whoever I think's not in somebody's back pocket is really where I'm looking to go, because we're seeing things come through the headlines, and nobody gets held accountable for half of it anymore.
Yeah, that is a big issue. That is a major issue. We have to start doing that, or we're going to lose our state, lose our country. We're going to do transparent investigations on things to make sure that people know that their government is operating at the highest level of ethics, as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
What's really, I think, frustrating for a lot of Americans, a lot of Minnesotans, is that the politicians get off with accountability. There's no accountability. Slap on their hand if anything. But if anything happens to us, we get a parking ticket. If we do, the hammer comes down hard.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a duplicity there that just drives people in a point of, look, the tables have turned and you guys have forgotten who you're supposed to serve. It's not the other way around. Our country is meant to be different, and is what we're slowly losing it. And that's why you're seeing so many people getting involved, because they want that to change.
Mm-hmm. And so I've seen you kind of retweet and post some stuff on Twitter along the same guidelines, and then there's always going to be trolls and haters and stuff, and they'll attack anybody. And I read an article one day, and it was like this young girl basically had a website, and it's slamming this person, slamming that person. You almost couldn't read it because it just doesn't make sense. It's this state. I feel like any election has really uneducated voters that they're just there for the last bit of it, and not paying attention to what you stand for. How do you feel like you're going to try to kind of get on board people who may not be involved with elections and kind of get your face out there?
Well, we've been going out a lot. When I say we, I'm talking about my wife and I, our campaign team. We've got a first-rate team, and we get a lot of traction. We've only been in this race for 3 months.
Yeah,
a lot of the candidates have been in for 7 months or longer. In the most recent straw polls that were done around the state, I'm number 1, 2, or 3.
Okay.
In our fundraising, we're going to be in the top 3.
Yep.
Of the 7 candidate pool in only 3 months. And we have great momentum going into the state convention. And what resonates with people is the story that I am defending, the idea of that American dream and the principles and values of this country. And they're looking for champions that are willing to fight for them. And that includes the idea that the first job of a public official, number 1, is the safety of their citizens. The public safety of their citizens. What's going on in downtown Twin Cities, we have people in the suburbs and greater Minnesota that don't even want to visit our Twin Cities. We have an opening day today for the Twins. And there's a ton of people that won't come because they're concerned about their safety. And that's the number 1 job for the number 1 chief executive, the governor, is to make sure that should happen. And he's AOL, basically, on that one. He's absent without leave, AWOL.
Right.
And that's a dereliction of duty. It's for the life of me, to be honest with you, Aaron. I don't know why is he running for. What is he running for re-election on? You talk about accountability.
Yeah.
What is it that they're going to run on re-election on, especially him and the attorney general? It's almost insulting, to be quite honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he'll grab the teachers union and say we have some successes, but there's been no successes with the way COVID was handled.
Right.
I try to be as unbiased as possible, but I don't see a success. And if somebody tells me there was a success during COVID, that person isn't somebody who can be trusted. You know when you turn on the news if a snake's talking or not.
Right.
You know when you talk to somebody when you're talking to a snake. You just know it. And I don't know by no means am I calling anyone a snake. It's just there's. I don't have a lot of trust.
Right. You know when you're being told the truth and someone's being authentic or not.
Right. Absolutely. And so when you decided to come run for governor, was it on you? Were you kind of going like, I need to do this? Or did people come to you and say, hey, Kendall, you need to do this. We're dying here, you know?
It was both. It was both. Yeah. The one tipping point for me has been really the crime that we're seeing. Look, as a kid, growing up in Harlem, I saw it. I mean, I'm in first and second grade, and I'm watching all these criminals, drug addicts, drunks. They target women when they, especially at the end of the month, because at that time it was one of the times that they knew the money was coming in, and that there wasn't direct deposit during that time when I was there. So the people got their Social Security checks in the mail. They had to go cash them. Sometimes they would cash them at a grocery store, that type of thing, and they became targets for all these men. And I saw it. Grandparents, older women, they would hide their money. They wouldn't take out their purses because they know that purses were being stolen. I'm like, where are the defenders? And number one, I never wanted to be one of those guys. Number two, if I was, I would be out there helping to defend them. So when I saw what was happening in our Twin Cities, I felt compelled to step forward to do something to change it, because 4 years ago, this didn't used to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting our cities back. 18 months. Absolutely. To answer your question, yes, there was a lot of people encouraged me to get involved, but the motivation was mine, and we felt it was a God-led decision. And so my wife and I both decided to move forward and see what we can do.
Absolutely. And, why is there I don't like to look at things as white and black, and I always just think it's like humans, and if you treat somebody different, that's strange,
right?
But why is there a narrative that the black community just should vote Democrat? No questions asked. That's just kind of it's pumped out into the public. I mean, I can't be the only one thinking this.
Well, first of all, there's a historical context to it, and it's long time indoctrination. So, when I still have family that lives in New York City. But when I moved with my dad to Oklahoma, when school was out in the summer, I would go and visit my mom every summer. Mm-hmm. And over the course of that time, when I started getting into high school, well, the kids that were my age in New York, the young girls had gotten pregnant. Now they're in welfare. They're in public housing projects. The boys had gotten into trouble, and they got in trouble with the law enforcement. And there's this constant narrative is that you can't get ahead. And when I say this, it is political leaders in that community. So, for example, Charlie Rangel was the congressional representative, the U.S. congressman from Harlem, when I left as a kid in 1972. When I graduated high school, when I graduated college, got married, had my first kid, had my fifth kid, he was still the congressional representative. 47 years later, he got wealthy. His family got wealthy, his cronies got wealthy, and people in Harlem remained in perpetual poverty. And they're being told they're in perpetual poverty, and he's trying everything he can to help get out of this. He's trying to get more money and help. But if you just keep voting for me, because they would point to those, rich white Republicans, they're kind of hold you down. They want to take things from you. It's hard to beat an indoctrination when you're getting it from 5 years old and up. And here's the contrast for you on this one. I tell people African Americans are doing quite well in this country, and I mean that. And I'm talking about legal immigrants from Africa, so those that come from Nigeria, other African countries that come legally, or even in the Caribbean islands, they earn 17% more than the average American. Not 17% more than an average Black American, 17% more, especially Nigerians, 17% more than the average American, because they see this country as a land of opportunity, and they haven't been indoctrinated by the left in this country since they were 5 years old. And that indoctrination is an anti-American, anti-white, anti-capitalist indoctrination.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people coming out now saying, like, there's something wrong here. And that's why you're seeing so many Black Republicans coming forward to help defend this country, from Winston Sears in Virginia, Herschel Walker in Georgia. You're seeing two Black Republican governors from Michigan to Illinois, and now because there's no better champion of that American dream than those that have come out of it and speak against the left's narrative.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah, it's just, there's been in the last 5 years, things have changed in the kind of the hive mind of this country to where your First Amendment rights are slowly being attacked to the point where I find myself I can't talk because of this reason. Can't talk because of this reason. It's sad, but the slippery slope's what's scarier. What could happen if kind of these ideas keep sliding this moral compass of this country? Because we're at a time where we're the world power, and people are rapidly approaching.
Well, in a lot of respects, especially with our media, it's really propagandists. They're not journalists. They're propagandists.
Right.
It's a lot like pre-World War II Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Get in line with the right way of thinking and talking, or we're going to ostracize you. We're going to eliminate you, or basically marginalize you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not who we were as a country.
Right.
And that's why you're seeing so many Americans getting involved in their politics locally, from the school board, demonstrations, to city council and politics, because they see this wokeism taking over. That's not part of our American culture. It's an infringement on not just the First Amendment rights, but everything the country stands for.
Right.
And when it comes to the racism part, and again, this is such a false narrative. And when I say this, people they stop and they think and they process it, because they rarely hear it, because they hear so much of the other side. That this is the least racist time in our country's history,
mm-hmm.
and this is the least racist country in the world.
Right.
And my parents and grandparents would have loved to have grown up in the America I grew up in.
Absolutely.
And what people are looking at when they see the disparities of incomes and they see the disparities of academic, those aren't racial disparities. They're not looking at the data close enough. When they peel that onion back and they look at 2-parent black families, those kids do just well. They do fine. They graduate from high school at the normal distribution curve. They get low incidents with running with law enforcement. The data does not hold up of their racial disparities, because they never want to bring up that guess what? There's a role for the nuclear family.
Right.
And the biggest enemy of the progressive left is the traditional nuclear family with an active, involved father. Whether that black, white, doesn't matter. That whole idea of the patriarchy, they don't like. And so, what has happened in my lifetime, is that the black family, since I was 5 years old, was 80% 2-parent families. And we've went from 80% 2-parent families to 80% fatherless homes without one national initiative to reverse the trend. Even for the black community, the black leaders, not even one initiative nationally to reverse the trend. If we were a spotted owl or a gray wolf, we'd be on the endangered species list. But for political reasons, so they can remain in permanent power, they keep it like this and act like it's normal. And the people that live in these communities, these moms don't want to be alone. They don't want to raise their kids alone.
Mm-hmm.
But they do nothing to change the circumstances, because they know that political power is what they want, regardless of the expense, regardless of the heartache that it causes the people that live in those communities.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah. Well, I guess on a lighter note, who's Kendall Qualls as a guy and a dad and everything? Are you a Michigan Wolverines fan? Are you a football guy? What's your interest outside of politics?
Well, you know what? My interest outside of politics was raising our 5 children. We adopted one of them. I tell people I can't remember which one. I love them all the same.
Mm-hmm.
We put our energy, I put my energy in raising our kids so they have a normal life. And our kids are close, our family's close. And I didn't want to spend the weekends away golfing or something like that, because I traveled a lot during the week. And I didn't see the kids that often because of my travel. And I didn't want to spend that whole weekend away, doing something, golfing or being away at games. So we just, as boring as it may sound, I was just a family man. I love sports. I watch sports when typically when the playoffs are around and that type of thing. But other than outside of work, it was with the kids when with my wife,
Yep.
and just doing just either goofy stuff, right? Out riding bikes, or we did a lot of canoeing. Our kids, when the kids were little, we had them involved in I call three things: the life sport they can take away. Either play tennis, piano, and they learned a foreign language. And then, but as the kids got older, like one of my kids, we went to a lot of his fencing matches. He was nationally ranked fencer.
Mm.
And then, my middle son now is on active duty. He's serving now as a fourth generation.
Oh.
And we're at a point now where we have more time than we've ever had because the kids are gone. And so,
Right.
so instead of taking up sports or golf lessons, here I am, getting involved in politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we can wrap it up. We talked about a lot in a short amount of time, but if you want to tell people where they can find you, your websites, your social media, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so the website is kq4mn.com. That's KQFOR, MikeNovember.com, for those that are in the military. And one of the things you'll find on that website actually is accountability. It's when we get control of the House, we'll have control of the Senate and the governor's seat. We'll be able to have a mandate. And there's 6 items, 6 action items we'll do in 6 months. It's on our website on the issues page, including taxes and law enforcement, the safety part I talked about, even tax rates or what the tax rates would be under a Qualls administration. So, and what we'll accomplish in 6 months. A bit of accountability and transparency for everyone.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate sitting down with you today. It was fun and really informative, and I wish you all the best.
All right, thanks.
Real me.